Today Bongbong is going to show me how to fix up this radio here. Sounds pretty shitty right now. Let's see what we got in store.
Alright, so here we are. We're sitting in Tyler's car. Actually, it's 4 months later. Because, well, we filmed this.
Things have been busy.
Things have been busy.
Life really showed up.
So, go and tell them it's been sounding good.
It's been sounding great. I've been looking for excuses to drive to the store and shit like that. It sounds awesome. I got a sub in my car now, which is cool. And it doesn't like rattle and sound janky, so it's great.
Alright, so in this video, or the purpose of this video, is actually just to go over the general, doing an entire sound system in your car. So we did a deck, all 4 speakers, a subwoofer, a 4-channel amp, and I mean pretty much that's the works, that's the whole thing. Basically, this whole thing started with you saying like, the stereo in my car really sucks, I want something better, here's my credit card, go have at it.
Well, yeah, I mean I was within reason. Yeah.
Getting into it, we went with an Alpine deck, new speakers, front and rear. You'll see later in the video the snag we run into because I chose to ignore the specs. I thought it was bullshit. They actually, anyway, you'll see.
Turns out you can trust the internet sometimes.
So
you can trust us.
So the first step in doing all this is removing the factory deck.
All right.
To the tape.
When you're working on a car that you haven't worked on before, you're not sure how stuff comes apart, it's really important to think about, well, what's holding, what fasteners are in place holding the thing together. So obviously you want to feel around for screws. Well, there's 2 right here, so we'll start there. Just remove those. On some makes and models, they'll hide screws behind the vents, so just take yourself like a flashlight or something, check. No screws in there, so it's safe to assume the rest is held in by dash clips. One thing you'll notice though, these are slider styles. Even with knobs, a lot of times the HVAC controls stay in place, so just pull the knobs off, if possible, so the face can come off. Put those in a safe place. Now we got the dash trim pieces out of the way, we can now get to the radio. This radio is held in, looks like, by 2 Phillips head screws. If you don't want to use your Phillips head, it looks like you could use a 10mm socket, but we're just going to use a screwdriver.
So now you got your old deck removed.
Yep, old deck is out.
We move on to removing the door panels and getting the front speakers.
Yes. Shit. I did say door card, didn't I?
Yeah.
Is that a Land Rover thing?
No, it's an English thing.
It's a Land Rover.
Jag.
Oh, 2? Okay. They're called door panels. Yeah, sorry.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the door card off this. Alright, now but you get in here, you got to pull this up, pull this out, pull your switches, pull this little trim piece that holds the mirror john. We're going to get started on this. Go ahead, this is 1 Phillips screw right here, holding your little trim for your door handle. Let's go ahead and pull these switches up. Alright. Go ahead and unplug your clips at the back. Just push this little button right here. Pops right out. There we go. This guy should just, in theory, might have to use that panel puller on it. Sorry.
There we go. Pull it right up. Another couple screws right here. This guy's got to come off here. You should just be able to gently pull it off with your hands. Yep. And again, sometimes with your hands, sometimes with the... No, did it with my hands. Sometimes you got to get under there with that spatula handle puller thing. Kind of work along the edges. I actually don't remember how this goes. Do you?
No.
Shit. Ah, you see?
So you slide out.
Slide out.
Yeah, and then you
hook on. That's good.
yeah. Special.
We're free except for this guy. Okay, you see?
Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and remove this factory speaker.
Now you got your door panels removed and the old speaker removed. It's time to install the new speaker.
Yeah. It should just plug right in.
Should. So,
right?
we run into a little snag here. Go ahead and tell them what happened.
All right. So I kind of got a wild hair up my ass the night I decided that I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Order all the parts. Josh came over. It was dark. We removed the driver's side door panel to like check the clearance. With the window down, because you don't want the back of the speaker hitting the glass, as we explained. So we got the depth part right, but as far as the diameter goes, the internet was saying that it's a 4-inch speaker, and Josh was like, that seems dubious.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was like, that's ridiculous. There's no way from the factory it came with a tiny little baby speaker in there. And we went to form after form. We looked at the Crutchfield fit guide, and I was like, horseshit. It's just it's a typo, and all these places will order 5 1/4-inch speakers.
And then, well, we measured it too, and it was like closer to 5 1/4. And then
it wasn't a dark, so
it was dark. It was like about to rain. So anyway, we ordered the 5 1/4s, and here we are now when we realized that it's the wrong size.
So we've run into first snag of this project. We measured it at night, so obviously that measurement was wrong, but the opening isn't actually for a 5 1/4-inch speaker. It actually seems like it's more meant for a 4. And I think, so these factory speaker plates aren't really going to work for us. I'm not sure what we're going to do here, so either we're going to build something around this or widen the opening. Not quite sure yet. So that's a bummer. So as you saw previously, this opening isn't exactly 5 1/4. So we're taking this factory speaker plate off, and now we have this huge gaping hole here. Now, the first thing I wanted to check was see, well, could we actually mount the new speaker to the sheet metal somehow? But as we mentioned earlier, we don't really have that much mounting depth. And when you get rid of the factory plate, it actually gets you closer. We're running into clearance issues with the glass. So, luckily, in a previous life, I was actually an audio installer, and I've collected various speaker rings and mounts. So this will help us figure out a way to mount this a little bit better. Maybe we'll rig something up like that. But right now, what's important here is we need to find a good way to secure the speaker, and then any of these open holes, you're going to have to find a way to seal up. So that's where we're at. Luckily, through all those rings that I had, I found out that these Chrysler speaker adapters seem to work pretty well. 2 of the holes actually go into the factory locations. We use a self-tapping sheet metal screw to secure that. But it does a pretty good job of giving us some material to actually mount the speaker to. and spaces it far enough off the glass and the mechanisms back here so there's no interference. But we're running into another issue here where this door sheet metal is getting in the way of the basket, so we're going to have to trim that up. So now that we have a pretty good idea where we're locating, again we're using the factory locations in the bottom too. Just going to take our Sharpie, just mark the area that doesn't need to exist anymore. Now we know that can come out. Always check to see what's behind it first. Now all you viewers at home are probably saying, well, he's not really using the proper tin snips here. I should be using like a left-hand shear. These are meant to just cut straight, but you know, sometimes you just gotta make do with the tools that you already have. Now we'll test fit our speaker. Clears the basket and gives us a place to mount our deal. Sweet. What we've done here is we already mocked up the speaker ring. Remember, we're using Chrysler speaker rings here. And before, there was a huge gaping hole here, and it's ideal to close off the space between the front of the cone and behind the cone. So we just end up using some sound deadening material here to build basically like a wall or a area that blocks it all off. And we're just marking everything up to see where we need to trim. So we used to also, by the way, we used a speed clip here, drilled a hole, used a speed clip, and we're just going to use a sheet metal screw to fasten the top piece there. But anyway, so this is going to sit in just like this, right there, and we need to mark off the area that needs to be removed, which is roughly this area. There you can see the line. Good enough. And if you're wondering what's the best way to cut this stuff, it wouldn't actually be your utility knife. Tin snips work really, really well. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it cut up. Test to see if that's exactly where it needs to go. Seems about right. Just go ahead and fold it back. Fold it back. And that's how we're going to make the opening. Part is actually wiring up the speakers from the factory. They actually come with these factory harnesses, and you can actually go ahead and buy speaker harnesses so that when you remove the factory ones, it gives you basically this right here with a pigtail that you can then connect to your new speakers with butt connectors. A lot of times though, or most of the time, when you remove your factory speakers, there's really no reason to buy that because you could just clip it off the speaker, and now you have yourself a factory harness. So, you know, again, better than cutting off factory harnesses equipment, you can just reuse the original stuff. Now, what you want to pay attention to, oh my god, is when you clip it, you want to look on the connector here, which is positive and which is negative, because if you have it reversed, you know, when you're playing your speaker, it can be out of phase, and what that means is this can be going in instead of out, while the other could be going out and in. Anyways, so just pay attention. This is positive, so now we know that their color coding is black with a red stripe, that's positive, and solid black is negative. It's going to be different for every vehicle. Okay, so this is the finished product. Again, we used a Chrysler speaker ring just to create a surface to mount to. We separated the rear cavity space from the front using sound deadening material, and we are securely in place. We used the factory harness, and this door is ready to go back together. So we're going to repeat this process for the driver door, and then we'll move on to the rear speakers.
Now we got the front speakers installed and that whole thing figured out. We then moved on to the rear speakers. So you got to remove those.
Yeah, it was a lot easier in the rear, so that was good.
Ta-da! Alright, so there's 4 screws holding this speaker in. Taking the last one out. let's pull up. Go ahead and disconnect your spade back here. I broke that.
Yeah. It's alright, we got new ones.
Alright.
So, like the front speakers, we run into a sort of kind of snag with the rear speakers.
The snag here is more that the Corolla I drive is a station wagon, and so it has two pillars on the back instead of having speakers in the rear doors, and it comes in the speaker that it came with from the factory is in a custom box.
Yeah.
So how are we going to mount aftermarket speakers into this custom box?
That also called for 4-inch.
Oh yeah, that we also had too big of a speaker for. So yeah.
Because there's a big open space here, Toyota actually engineered these factory speaker boxes, which are pretty neat because they built their own ported box for what we thought were 5 1/4-inch speakers. But again, same with the front doors. We have 5 1/4 with a 4-inch opening. It doesn't quite fit. So what we need to do is find a way to mount this, either making our own enclosure here or finding a way for this to work. So there's a couple options, but what I'm going to try and do, I'd like to use this if possible, and if we are going to do that, we're going to use these templates that they come with, and I'm thinking that we use some of the factory holes, and then if we cut away any material here, we can just again fill it up with that sound deadening material, again to recreate the box. But something that we also have to be mindful of is these factory grills are baffled here, and we need to make sure that'll clear the ring. So, snag averted, we were able to modify the factory Toyota boxes with the factory plugs and mount the speakers in. That's it for the rear. So once we button this up, we've got all 4 speakers done. We're gonna move.
We didn't film that part.
Dude, because the back was so fucking ugly, dude. YouTube would have ripped us apart.
You want to talk about that?
No!
Come back and either use sound deadening materials or...
I'm actually gonna cut this whole part out. Because I know people
do that, yeah.
in the audio community, they'd be like, that's bullshit, you shouldn't have done that.
Whatever, sounds good.
I think it sounds good, but...
You know, if you want to tackle this project, I would tell you, yeah, measure it when it's daylight instead of in the dark.
Oh, and...
we pretty much fucked up right from the beginning.
And part of the bigger fuck up in the beginning was when we Googled 94 Corolla front door speaker size and everywhere it said 4-inch, and I called bullshit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, as it turns out.
As it turns out, they
were actually 4-inch, but
now we have 5 1/4-inch speakers, and it sounds probably way better than any 4-inch speaker would.
And Bongbong got to do some heavy modification on my doors. Trimmed up some of my sheet metal.
Now all the door speakers have been installed and they fit and whatever. Moving on to the subwoofer install. So first step, test fit where you're going to have it located.
Yep, so we had to remove the passenger. We decided we were going to put it under the passenger seat, but before we removed the seat, we actually just took the sub and slid it under, and it fit pretty well.
The reason we decided to put it under the passenger seat, first off, it's an all-in-one powered sub, so the amp and the sub and the enclosure is all built in. The reason we did that was because one, you wanted to keep the cargo space. 2, we live in a city and you don't want anyone like looking in and seeing your stuff, so keeping everything hidden and stealthy is usually the best way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next step is we're going to test fit to make sure that our sub actually will fit under the desired location, which is going to be under the passenger seat. Looks like the amp fits, so the next step is we're going to go ahead and remove this seat from the car.
So the next part is called benching the amp, and what that is setting up your amps in configuration and wiring them up before you put them in the car. It's just a much cleaner install. Keeps your wires nice and tidy, so this is how we do that.
What we're going to do now is called benching the amp, or amps. And what we're doing here is we're getting everything wired up and ready to go for installation. I find it a lot easier to keep things more organized that way. This 4-channel amp, again, like I said, is a lot smaller, so how we set this up is going to be a little bit different than you would at the traditional 4-channel amp. But one thing to remember is when you're wiring these things up, you always want to try your best to keep the signal cable, these RCAs, separate from your power cables. for interference reasons. So we're gonna have this situated in the car pretty much like this, under the passenger seat. And what we're gonna need is, or the way this is gonna work, the pre-outs of the deck go to here. This is the remote turn on. This will connect to the deck, and the deck will let the amp know when to turn on. And out the back here, we also have 12 volt in, ground wire, and then a pass-through remote. So this amp knows when to turn on. The radio tells the amp when to turn on through this cable, and in return, this amp can tell the next amp when to turn on this cable, which will be for this amp. Additionally, this is going to be the amplified speaker output. Obviously, this is going to reach the deck, so we're going to be using speaker wire to come up to tap into the whole system there. So to keep things clean, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just cut all this off. No longer need that. And to keep things also clean, something I like to do. When possible, twist your cables together so they become one unit of the amp. And then we're going to go ahead and pair these off. So the colored cables, green and purple, are the rear channels, white and gray are the front channels. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply butt connectors and wire up this appropriate speaker cable.
Now you got it wired up on the bench, the next thing to do is actually set it in the car, fit it up, mount it, and then move on. So
we're basically getting ready to install the 2 amps and sub into the car. You want to find a good ground point, and if it's just anywhere, if it's on a painted surface, you just want to grind away the paint, make sure you get a good connection there. You can do a seatbelt bolt, something like that, but I just chose to grind away paint. Put it right there.
okay.
We've got the cables routed. We have the amp here. We're going to be running the power cable down the outside. All the signal cables are through the carpet, through the center, up, and then out the dash, and we'll wire that to the deck later.
Now the amp's installed. All the wires are tucked in and run to the deck area, that sort of thing.
Very clean.
Power cable. So the next part is running the power cable, through the car and through the firewall to connect to the battery.
Yes.
And that part was also a pain in the ass.
Of course.
So now we've got the power cable ran all the way through the passenger side. We're down here on the driver's side, and we got to get that power cable through the firewall. So what I typically do, the nice thing is this is an automatic car, so a lot of times the space for where the clutch would go is usually free. It is, right up there. There it is. But typically, if there's no available factory grommets, if it's an automatic car, you can always just pull the factory location where the clutch would go. And we're right to the firewall. And we know it's clear on the other side because, again, that's where the slave cylinder would go. Or the master for the clutch. So we're going to drill a hole through there, and we'll connect it to the battery. Alright, so we already put our hole in the firewall, and actually, I don't know if you can zoom in here, but we actually got it right there where the clutch master cylinder would go, and we put a nice little grommet there. So now we're just putting wire loom through the wire so it looks fairly factory-ish. And the next thing will be installing the fuse holder, and we should be good to go.
So depending on your car, a lot of times it's really not all that difficult. You know, just depending on how much space you have in there. A lot of times, cars have a factory grommet or a place to go and run a cable, but it's not uncommon where you're gonna have to drill a hole. So always check twice. Make sure you're not gonna drill into like your brake booster or any component. So now the power cables ran. What do we do next? You gotta wire the deck harness. So now we're approaching the end. So recap: we have door speakers installed, rear speakers installed, sub amp installed, wires run to the front, power cable run. The only thing left really is actually installing the radio.
Putting the deck in.
So to put the deck in, we do the deck harness, and
can't forget your antenna.
Deck harness, antenna.
I like the FM radio.
And then we mount it in there. So.
All right, we're nearing the end of this project. So the only thing left to do now is wire in our deck harness to our factory wiring harness adapter here. And remember, we're using a 4-channel amp, so this actually won't ever connect to the deck since we're not using the deck amp. The only thing we're connecting is your memory wire, constant 12, switch 12 volt, dimmer illumination, so the deck knows when to dim when you're using it at night. We don't need that, no power antenna. And we're not using these either. So just these 3 wires to the deck and we'll cap everything off. Transfer the factory brackets over to the new radio. First thing I like to do is take the face off so we don't accidentally scratch it. Next step, this car is actually not cage mount. I'm not going to use the trim ring. We don't need the cage. We don't need the demo stuff. Okay, so on the side you see T's and N's. N's are for Nissan, T's are for Toyota. I don't know if that's true, but
now the wiring harness is done, the deck is prepped for install, and the only thing left to do is connect everything together and slam it back in the car, put it all back together, and that's pretty much the whole job. So
we're going to trim all this excess that we don't need and connect it to this. So basically all we're going to do is we marked off which RCAs go to what, our signal wires. We have subwoofer, rear channel, front, and that's what's going to send the signal to the amp. And then we have the deck harness here. Plugs into here, and this side plugs into the car, and that's what's going to power. That's how the deck's actually going to get power. And then these blanks right here will hook up to the amplified output that we wired from the amps earlier. Well, here's the deck installed, trim pieces back in. That's what it looks like. What do you think, Tupp?
Well, you tell me.
Show them we need it all, but all we do is show them what we need it all. Now box and infinity time. I'm in disguise behind enemy line.
Okay, so that's
a wrap. That was it.
That's everything you need to do a full system in your car.
Very simple.
Pretty much the same thing in old cars.
Worth it.
You replace the speakers, you replace the deck, amp.
Just take everything out. Put new shit in.
Yeah, and you don't have to do everything all at once. We did in this case, but that
it was a busy day.
Alright, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. If you like it, please share and subscribe. A final little bonus though, Tupp had to actually replace his belt, so...
Yeah, I got to get my ass kicked again. It's good.
Additionally, I think I have a bit of an issue with one of the belts on this thing. You know, when I turn that new radio off, I'm hearing this strange little... And then when I hit well, you understand what I'm talking about, but... Alright, so if you take a look down here, you can see this belt that I'm talking about, and you see where it's is frayed on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, you're not gonna have a good time. And oof, that just puts a damper on things.
So we're gonna do all the belts today, aren't we?
Yeah, there's gonna be 3 belts, and it'll be fun. It'll be
Alright.
fun.
You set your parking brake? Nope. You gotta get in the habit of that.
Ah! Why would you do that?
Alright, buddy.
You're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, shit.
I'm not sure what we're gonna do here.
We're trying to explain it like we didn't fuck it up.
But now we're being like, no, we actually fucked it
Yeah,
up.
like, so the internet called for 5 1/4.
Bullshit. Don't do that.
I went to Puerto Rico. I saw a Corolla like every other vehicle. Love you guys. Love Puerto Rico. Love Latin America. God bless.